This story will amaze you. It's truly impressive. Listen and share your thoughts, and let me know if you've experienced anything similar. I'll leave the store's number down here, where you can request the catalog with no obligation whenever you want. This lets you browse various products and designs for every taste. There are really sizes, colors and designs, so of course I invite you to check out the products from the channel store whenever you want. But you should know that in these days, the first giveaway is coming up, as I mentioned before. And where you'll be able to win a totally exclusive t-shirt. That means the winner will get a t-shirt that will be one of a kind. It won't be for sale, it will be designed exclusively for the winner of this giveaway, so keep that in mind. This first giveaway will be held on Spotify, so to participate, keep in mind that you have to follow me on Spotify. Obviously, you have to listen. The latest episode, which I just uploaded, is it this cover you're seeing right now? Pay attention, because it's an unreleased episode that will only be on Spotify. It won't be on any other platform. So I invite you to listen to it because it's really good. And finally, you have to leave a comment with your opinion and also an email so I can contact you, because if you win, I won't have any way to reach you. This is extremely important. An opinion and a contact email where I will later contact the winner and we'll coordinate the delivery of the t-shirt there. The drawing will take place next Thursday. So keep in mind that from today until Thursday you have time to listen and comment. And next Saturday I will be announcing who the winner of the t-shirt is. And then of course I'll coordinate all the shipping and everything else. I apologize 1,000 times, but for now the drawings are only for the Republic of Argentina. I have no way to ship abroad. Well, actually I do, but it's extremely expensive. So for now it's only for the Republic of Argentina. Still, I invite all of you to listen to this unreleased episode on Spotify, because it's really good. Friends, with that said, I welcome you to this new episode. Sorry for such a long intro, but I had to let you know all of this. And now, let's get started with this episode. Welcome! I always thought that the church was a place of peace, a place of refuge where you could find salvation when something bad happens to you. And I'm not just talking about the paranormal, I mean in every way. For example, when we're going through a delicate health situation, maybe a family member died or we lost our job. There are many factors that, of course, combined with the loneliness one might be experiencing, can lead to a certain psychological and mental state. If you don't pay proper attention to it, there's a high chance it could end badly. Specifically, in my case, it all started with a process that confused me so much that I didn't know where to ask for help. It was really hard for me, but when I finally did it, it felt like a bucket of cold water. The answer I got from a priest was, "You have evil in you, no one is going to help you." Can you imagine getting that response when all you need is help? I don't think you understand. Can you imagine discussing this? I was born in Cordoba capital, but when I was about 11 years old, my parents separated and I ended up living with my mom, my sister and my grandparents in Rafaela, Santa Fe. My life in general was pretty normal, except for the fact that we never saw my dad again. He completely disappeared from the map. But to be honest, I think it was for the best, since I can easily tell you he was a very complicated person, violent, alcoholic, a bad guy. But there's also one detail. Thinking back on it, what later started happening to me. I realized that he was possibly suffering from something similar or the same thing, and he had no idea how to deal with it. My 16 years, a pivotal moment. You'll soon find out why it was the first step of this nightmare that almost ended my life. The first memory I have of when all this began was waking up during the night and seeing a person standing there. Or rather, their shadow or silhouette, because I couldn't make out any features. In a corner of the room, I shared with my 4-year-old sister who was younger than me. So you can imagine that when this happened, the last thing I wanted was to seem scared in front of her. And my decision was to cover myself and try not to look in that direction. I didn't tell my mom either. She already had her own problems, working and taking care of the family all by herself. So I started dealing with this completely on my own. But time passed, and this presence, without a doubt, became stronger. One night, like so many others, I woke up, but it wasn't like before. This time, when I opened my eyes, I realized that this entity, or whatever it's called, right next to my bed. It was very close to my face. For the first time, I felt a fear unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I realized this thing wanted something bad. And here I want to tell you something. One might think, and I say this as an adult, that a kid could see these kinds of things because of their imagination. Tiredness, the stress that school causes, the absence of a father, in my case, among other things. But do you know what was the scariest part and why this was ruled out? When I saw this entity that night, I instinctively covered myself and turned away as always. But at the same time, I hear my sister let out a huge scream, calling for my mom. When my mom comes into the room, seconds later, desperate, asking what had happened, it was she who told her that she saw a man crouched beside my bed. The first thing she did was ask me, but I don't know why. I said that I was sleeping and hadn't seen or heard anything. Later, I apologized and admitted what I saw that night, but that's still in the future. My mom searched the whole room, the windows and the house, but no one was there. And it made a lot of sense, because I knew perfectly well that it wasn't a physical person, it was something different. The important point is that my sister saw this entity for the first time and without knowing how many times. I had seen it before, and I insist I never told anyone about it, not even a friend or classmate. Not to my grandparents or mom. Therefore, it was very important because it proved that it wasn't just the imagination of a teenager. There was something, but we didn't know what. At that moment, my mom didn't give it much importance, or at least that's what she tried to show. She told us that we were strictly forbidden to watch horror movies or anything scary, because afterwards my sister would have nightmares. But a few nights later, something similar happened again, or maybe even worse. I got up to go to the bathroom, and when I came back to the room, this shadow was standing right next to my bed. And even though it didn't have eyes, I actually couldn't make out its face. It looked like I felt inside that it was staring right at me. It was a horrible feeling. I could have run out, but my sister was in there, so I just turned on the light. At that moment it disappeared, but what I saw made my blood run cold. My little sister was looking with a scared expression in the direction where that shadow had been. When I spoke to her, I said I could also see this person, or whatever it was, and that I didn't know what it wanted. Of course I was terrified, but I realized that she was even more scared than I was, and I had to at least try to give her a sense of protection. Since then, we've slept with a nightlight on, and luckily it was a partial solution because this entity wouldn't appear when there was light. At least for the time being, because time surprised us once again. A few weeks later, in the middle of the night, I woke up because of something terrible. The bedside lamp was off. We never learned how it happened, but I suspect this entity was involved. But what woke me up was an intense pain in my leg. When I woke up in complete darkness, I saw this person at the foot of my bed, crouched down like before, again. My sister started screaming and my mom showed up. In a matter of seconds, she turned on the ceiling light and saw with her own eyes that something was happening. She didn't see this entity, but she did see that my little sister was crying, covered up to her head. I was sitting on the bed, leaning against the headboard, looking all around, completely scared and holding my leg near my right ankle. My mom asked what had happened, and this time I was the one who told her everything all at once. Without giving her time to try to persuade me that it was just a dream or paranoia from watching a movie, I was certain about what my sister and I saw each night, and now something else had happened. I looked at my leg and I clearly had some kind of bite, which, although it wasn't extremely big compared to a normal person's mouth, it actually was. And you could clearly see the teeth marks on my skin, and there was even a little blood coming out. My mom saw it all. I didn't feel much pain. It was more like an intense burning sensation that lasted several days. Since that night, we all started sleeping together in my mom's room. And maybe you're wondering about my grandparents. That's something I haven't told you until now. They weren't alive. They used to live with us using the house at the front of the property while we lived in the one at the back. That house had belonged to my uncle before, so we were alone in the house. One detail that might be important is that my mom was never religious, and neither were we. Therefore, the idea of praying or using holy water was not something we ever considered or had in our minds. Although, of course, everything changed with time. A few nights went by, and once again I woke up in the middle of the night. Not because of my sister, not because of a bite or a hit, it was because my mom screamed and even threw a shoe at my bed. When I opened my eyes, the light was on and my mom, desperate, was saying that she had seen a guy standing next to my bed. She checked everything again and of course there was no one there. So I could tell you that that night my mom started to believe in what was happening because she saw it just like we did, with her own eyes. You might wonder, what did we do? What did my mom do? The answer is nothing. My mom tried to act like this thing didn't exist, but she also didn't want us to be alone in the house for anything in the world. When she went to work, we absolutely had to stay with my grandparents. Until something happened that completely changed everything. One afternoon at my grandparents' house, I was alone watching television in the dining room. First, I felt a strong chill down my back. I was already used to it, and somehow my body warned me that something was wrong. And just a few seconds later, I feel something hit me. It was on my left arm, right at shoulder level. Of course, there was no one with me, so I got up and ran to the kitchen where my grandmother was. That push turned out to be some kind of scratch that this entity gave me. The scariest part was that until then, it had never attacked me outside my house, much less during the day. I talked about it with my mom when she got home, and then she decided to talk about it with my grandma, her mother. And that afternoon I found out something that could be the key to everything that was happening. That afternoon, my mom told my grandma something she'd never shared before. For many years, my dad also said he was haunted by a shadow or a ghost that hurt him. But as usual, he acted violently, and this time while drunk. No one ever took him seriously, not even my mom. So my grandmother took this as something to keep in mind, something very important. If my dad, despite his bad habits, wasn't lying, then possibly this entity that was following him was now after me for some reason. And in a little while, I want to tell you something else that's going to leave you more than surprised. The thing is, my grandma brought holy water the next day. She used to go to church quite often. She sprinkled it all over our house and asked us earnestly that whether we believed or not, we should try to pray a little every night, asking God for protection. And what can I tell you? And it was really hard for us because we didn't even know the prayers, but we did it every night. And can you believe it? Things settled for a few nights until one night, which was the worst. I woke up really scared, falling off the mattress just like you heard. This entity was dragging me out of the room with tremendous force. When my mom turned on the light, this thing let me go. However, the burning sensation in my leg persisted for over 3 months, despite having no burn or injury. There were many situations like this, maybe less intense. And I don't want to be boring, but the thing is, a few years later, my grandparents passed away. Unfortunately, just a few months apart. It wasn't anything unusual, they were very old. On one hand, my grandmother had been fighting an illness for years, and my grandfather, on the other hand, didn't recover from pneumonia. The thing was that my mom couldn't take everything we had been going through anymore and decided to sell the house. She wanted to start somewhere new and leave this entity, or whatever it was, in that house, which had been our home for many years. We moved to Santa Fe capital, taking advantage of a new job opportunity my mom had. I won't share the location of this house since my mom still lives there. My sister got married and lives in Buenos Aires, and as for me, after graduating, I got married and moved to the city of Cordoba. But before I tell you what happens nowadays and why I started the story the way I did, I have to mention that in that house in Santa Fe, our life was far from peaceful. This entity didn't take long to manifest itself again. It seemed to hit and bite me repeatedly. It was unbearable. And as an adult, I went to a church that a friend recommended to me to talk and ask their pastor for help. They were evangelicals. This man came to my house and supposedly performed some kind of exorcism. And the only thing he wanted, he repeated it. Many times it was for me to go to his church because that was the only way to keep the demons away. Honestly, I wasn't really convinced by this guy who seemed to speak more from a manual on how to get things. Faithful to what I needed, which was concrete help in my day-to-day life. Afterwards, whether I went to church or not was another thing, so you can imagine that nothing came of it, right? Then I went to a Catholic church, but they couldn't help me either. Once, someone suggested I see a payambanda, but I lacked the courage. It's a religion that I've always been a little afraid of, fearful. And I also felt that by trying to cleanse this entity I had, maybe others would attach themselves to me without me knowing. By this I mean that even though I was never religious or a true believer in all these matters, I was very clear that in my case there was something bad that was following me, and it was specifically targeting me. Neither my mom nor my sister were its victims, only I was in its plans. The question is, why? And this is where we get to a very important part of this story. I searched for answers alone and found the only relative. On my dad's side, my Aunt Ella, in a long conversation, told me something enlightening for me from what she knew from her grandmother. That is, my great-grandmother. I never met her, but she was a country woman from Santiago del Estero, known in the family as a healer. She was the only one who dedicated her life to all of this, surely among many other things related to this kind of work. The thing is, in her family, almost everyone had ended their life in a tragic way. But specifically, she really emphasized my uncle, my dad's brother, who had also made a final decision in his own home. After not knowing how to deal with something that was haunting him. He was always labeled as crazy. In fact, in the family we knew him as Crazy Ruben. But the most complicated part of all this was that as soon as his death happened, it was my old man who, already as an adult, began to show the same condition. And as my mom told it, my dad said that a dark man, a shadow, a ghost, was following him all the time. He started to become violent, it got much worse, my parents separated, and we completely lost track of where he ended up. But my aunt knew where he was. He had gone to the province of Salta, and the only thing that was known was that, just like my uncle, he ended up hanging in the garage where he lived. This is where things start making more sense. Remember when I said being 16 was a key moment in this story? Curiously, my old man died days before my birthday, just 16 days before I began experiencing what both he and my uncle did. This entity apparently was now with me. And my biggest fear was my 8-year-old son at that time, because if I died, he would surely be next. At that time, I ended up going to many places trying to get this off me. I was starting to get desperate because this entity kept manifesting itself. Everyone in my family saw it, both my wife and my son, although, as always, I was the only one who ended up affected. As I said, I visited many places and even overcame my fear to go to an Umbanda temple. But the place that shocked me the most was because of the answer I got from a supposed pastor who is considered an authority, right? I intend to mention his name. The moment he saw me, without even really saying hello, he told me this: "You have evil in you and no one will be able to help you." When I heard this, it almost took away my hope. I thought my life was doomed to suffer, to die, and that my son would be next. It was many years, but finally in 2018 I ended up at the house of a man from Sonchales in Santa Fe who was finally able to give me a hand. Unfortunately, he's not with us today because the pandemic took him like many others. But basically, to sum it up, I saw everything that happened over 7 straight afternoons, during which I had to fast completely for the last 3. I was only allowed to drink water. This man would welcome me and simply recite prayers, moving his hands near my body without touching me. Although I can swear to you that I felt it, it was something fascinating. During the first 2 days nothing happened, but every day after that, when he finished, I would get an uncontrollable discomfort until I ended up vomiting. Then he would give me an herbal tea, I don't know what kind, and he would leave. During my strict fast over the past 3 days, I also felt like vomiting. And it was something totally unexplainable that in the stuff I threw up there were pieces of meat or something similar, dark in color, but that I clearly hadn't eaten. So, where did they come from? After the 7 days where this man worked with me, I felt after so many years free. Let's see, I have no intention of convincing anyone of anything. I'm just sharing this because there might be people going through similar situations and they should know something. Even though it's hard, help can come when you least expect it. Nowadays I feel good. Never again. This entity showed up and I hope everything stays this way because I wouldn't want my son to go through the same hell.